The best way to learn how to code is not by watching videos or tutorials, but it's by actually coding something. And I and a lot of other people call this project-based learning. It's like learning how to cook. You don't get better by reading recipes or watching cooking tutorials, but it's by actually cooking and then tasting the food that you're cooking. And likewise with coding, you only get better at coding by actually building something and writing some code and then doing some testing and see how your code performs. When I was learning how to code in university, of course, we had our lectures, and then we had to learn some theory, and then we had some mini coding assignments to make sure we understood the theory. But we actually didn't really grow at programming until they gave us the projects. In each of those projects, I was stretched out of my comfort zone, and then I had to really think about the theory and internalize it, and then that's when I was able to make progress on my projects. And those projects were really crucial because it gave me some confidence in my coding skills. It helped me a lot with debugging, and these kinds of things you don't learn from lecture. You only learn them by actually coding those coding projects. And furthermore, the skills that I learned from those coding projects, I still carry them with me today. And it's a cumulative effect, these skills. So as I've grown in my software development career, I've done many projects, and as I've done those many projects, I've learned something new in each of those projects, and I've carried them with me up until today. And that's what I carry with me as I approach my new coding projects, my new coding tasks. And so those coding projects are really important. So in this video, I'm going to go over step by step how to build your first programming project. And of course, you're not going to learn just by watching this video or this tutorial. You're going to learn by actually doing it on your own. But I want to provide this video as kind of like I'm sitting next to you. And so even though I told you that you don't learn how to code from watching videos and tutorials, I would say I did learn a lot how to code by sitting with more senior level programmers, guiding me along and helping me process, helping me think through my code. And as I've worked with them, that's how I got better too. And so you can think of me as like your mentor for this video. So my name's Henrik, and I'm here to help you learn the foundations of software development. So let's get started. So for this programming project, it's actually a project that comes from my 30-day beginner coding challenge. And that's a free PDF guide that you can download in the link in the description. And in that guide, I teach you how to build 4 programming projects. And these programming projects are really beginner friendly. You don't have to know any code whatsoever. And in that 30-day beginner coding challenge, I lay out all the theory that you need to learn. I provide some helpful videos, helpful tutorials, helpful tips to think about as you go about building these programming projects. So in this video, I'm going to go through the first one, and that's the tip calculator. So here's the project description or instructions for that first project. It says build a fully functional tip calculator application in C that calculates the tip amount for a given bill. And I give a hint. It says hint, use the double data type. So let's go through this step by step, and I hope that this will give you some confidence and give you a head start on this 30-day beginner coding challenge. Okay, this is Visual Studio Code, and I have a tipcalculator.c file that I created, and so let's go ahead and start coding. And if you need any help with VS Code, you can watch my other tutorials on that, on how to set that up. So this is an IDE that you can use to build your programming projects. So let's build our tip calculator. So I'm going to do #include, and we always want to include the standard library, the standard input-output library. Okay, so we've created our main function. Let's do a return 0 here. Now the first thing that we're going to do is we want to get an input from the user. We want to get the bill amount. So let's create a variable called bill amount. So we have a variable bill amount, and then we're going to ask the user how much the bill is. So this is when we use that standard library printf function. Okay, now let's just run this to see what it looks like so far. Okay, there you go. It says enter the bill amount. And let's do a greeting too. Okay, let's run that. Okay, welcome to the tip calculator, enter the bill amount. All right, so now we need to ask the user what the bill is. So we're going to use scanf. So here's scanf. This is how we're going to get the bill amount from the user. So we use %lf to read in a double, and then we're going to store whatever that user inputs and put it inside bill amount. And then we use ampersand to indicate the address of this bill amount variable. Okay, so the program finished, but we want to make sure that we're actually storing this 123 $122.15 inside bill amount. We want to make sure that that's actually happening correctly. So let's do another printf, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to print the value that's in this variable. Okay, so we're just going to do printf you entered, and then the double %lf, and then bill amount. So let's see what happens here. And by the way, this is the end of line character. So this is how we tell the compiler that we want to print an end of line after we're done. So for example, here, this is how we basically we're saying put 2 end of lines here. So that's these two, and then welcome to the tip calculator. And then we have to do an end of line to indicate that we want to go to the next line, and before we print this next printf statement here. Okay, so let's run this one. Okay, the bill amount 123.15, and then it says you entered 123.15.0000. So now what is that 00000? This is there because this is a double, and so the compiler doesn't know that it's actually referring to money. So if we want to print this in a more human readable way, then we can just do %.2. And so what this is doing is we're telling the compiler that we only want to have 2 decimal places. So this will refer to the cents. So let's go ahead and run this and do it again. Okay, so there you go. Now it's 123.15. And if you'll notice, I could actually do 123. And even though I didn't put any decimals there, it's always going to do 2 decimal places because we specified it in this printf here. But we also want to ask the user how much tip to give. So let's copy this one here. And instead of saying enter the bill amount, enter the tip amount, the tip percentage. Then we'll create a new variable called tip percentage. And then we're going to use this one here. And then here we're going to say, we're going to verify what the user entered. And we're going to say you entered whatever tip percentage, like 18% or 20%. Let's put extra end-of-line characters here to separate out these 2 user inputs. So let's go ahead and run that. Okay, 123. Okay, so now we have some space between entering the bill amount and the tip percentage. And then let's say 20%. Okay, you entered 20%. Okay, so we got the bill amount, we got the tip percentage. Now let's actually do the calculation. So we want to calculate the tip amount, and then we also want to calculate the total amount. So let's create 2 new variables, the tip amount and then the total amount. And then we do the calculations here. I'm going to put a comment here saying calculate calculations. And then we're going to calculate the tip amount first. So that's just going to be the bill amount times the tip percentage divided by 100. Something that you'll learn as you're doing your programming projects is that you really want to test things out slowly, like incrementally. So here I could easily go ahead and calculate the total amount. But what I've learned from my my second coding professor, he said that you shouldn't just code everything all at once and then expect everything to work. And so he was really encouraging us to make sure something works first before you move on to something else. So with that said, let's verify that the tip amount that we calculate here is correct. Okay, so let's run this. Okay, let's do something simple. Let's do 100, and then we'll say 20%. Okay, that seemed to work. The tip amount is $20, so that's indeed 20% of 100. Let's try it again. Let's use less round numbers. Maybe let's go back to 123.15, and then let's say it's 20.5%. And then we do indeed get $25.25. So this tip amount is correct. Okay, now let's go ahead and calculate the total amount. So the total amount, the bill amount plus the tip amount. Okay, bill amount is 123.15. Let's do a 20.5% tip. And then we have that 25.25 again, which is what we had earlier, right? And then we add 20.25 plus this one. That's 148.40. So the total amount is correct. So there you go. Now you're done. But of course, you can always add on to this. This is really, really basic. You can clean it up. You can remove these printfs here. You don't need to verify anymore. So this is when you can start cleaning up your code. So you make sure everything works first. Then you start cleaning up your code, making it look pretty, making the output look pretty. So we remove that because we know that that's working already. Just some quick words about this project. Why did I decide to do a tip calculator? The reason why I decided to do a tip calculator is just so that you have some experience with calculations. So if this is your first time coding, and I designed this for people who didn't have any coding experience, I want them to get used to doing calculations in C. And so if you make a mistake where you call this an int, that's why I give the hint to use the double data type. If you do an int, you'll notice that the calculations are not going to be correct. And then let's change this also to D. So D is used for the int data type. %LF, %D is for the int data type, %LF is for the double data type. So let's run this one. Okay, now we don't have any errors. So now let's enter the bill amount. Let's do 100 or 123. You entered 123, that's correct. And then we do 20%. Okay, so 20% of 123, is that correct? So you'll see it's $24. That's not correct. You can see here that it should be 24.6, but the reason why it's 24 is because we're doing integer division and multiplication here. 123 times 20 and whatever that number is, and then we divide it by 100. So this top number might be okay, the numerator, but then when we do the division by 100, we're doing integer division, so the decimal part gets truncated off. And so we don't have the right answers here. The tip calculator is not good enough. And so this is why I said that you should use the double data type. Now there's another data type that some people may want to use. They might want to use float. So float is another data type that you can use that has decimals. And this is something that I did in the past where I was doing this project before when I was young, and I used float instead of instead of double, because I thought float was good enough. But let's see what happens. Okay, 123.15. Okay, that looks weird. Why is there a 2 there? Okay, now we calculate the tip percentage. We'll do 20.5. We forgot to put the %.2. So we're actually seeing the number with more than 2 decimal places. This is actually good that we forgot to show only 2 decimal places, because if we did only 2 decimal places, we would think everything is fine here and everything is fine here. Let's say that we did .2. Float for this case is actually giving us the right results, but if you noticed earlier when I did the calculation without the .2, we're seeing that the number is not being entered correctly. So we gave 123.15, but the number became 123.15 with a 2 at the end. Okay, let's go back to double and see what happens. Maybe the 2 is going to go away. Okay, 123.15. Okay, so there you go. So now you see the 2 is not there. And then we enter the tip percentage, 20.5. And so we actually see similar numbers as before with the float case, but at least we don't have that weird 2 over here. And so this just goes to show you that double is more precise. Double is more precise than float. And that's because float uses less memory than double. So this is another reason why I wanted you to do the tip calculator, because it allows you to, or it gets you thinking about data types. And so it gets you thinking why we should use the double data type. And so from this example, or from this video alone, you can already see that double is more precise, and double is a good data type to use when it comes to calculations. Now float is good for calculations that don't require a lot of precision. Maybe it's referring to some sensor data, and sensor data, we don't care too much about the preciseness of that sensor data, depending on your feature or your functionality. And so, but when it comes to money, we really want the amounts that we're calculating to be really precise. So that's why I recommended that you use double. Before I end the video, I do want to showcase another example for this tip calculator project, and this is from one of my students, Syed. So Syed did this coding challenge, and then this is the code he gave me, and he was having some trouble with it, and I helped him out a little bit. And you can actually watch one of my other videos on how I fixed it, or how I was able to debug it, and Syed was able to fix it on his own, I think. This is his code. His code is a little different than my code. Mine is really simple, but he has extra features. So for his, he has a while loop, and you can basically just ask the user if they want to calculate the tip or quit the program. So he made his more sophisticated, and then so he gets the choice, and if it's Q, then he exits the program. But if it's T, or if it's not Q, then we come into this else case. And in this else case, they enter the bill, the tip percent, and then he also includes the number of people that you want to split the bill for. And then for each person, they're going to split the total. And so it's the tip amount, the total bill, and then the shared cost. So let's run this one. Enter your choice. Let's do T. Enter the bill, 123.15. And then tip percent, 20.5. Number of people, 1. So we're getting similar numbers as earlier, 25, 25, and 148.40. So that's what we got here. If you round this one, 25.25 and 148.40. All right, so there you go. That's the tip calculator. I wanted to go through this first programming project with you step by step because I know how valuable it is to work with a mentor. And so maybe you've already downloaded my challenge and you're stuck on the first project. And I hope this gets you unstuck, gives you some confidence, and then go to the next project. I mean, of course, you have to build this yourself. You can't just watch this tutorial and then call it a day, say that you did the programming project. No, you have to do it yourself first, and then maybe personalize it a little bit, do some more testing, and really understand what's going on, and then you can move on to the next programming project. All right, like I mentioned earlier, if you're just starting off in your programming journey and you don't know where to start, you can download my 30-day beginner coding challenge. And it's a 30-day guide where I teach you how to build those 4 beginner programming projects. It's really beginner friendly, and I go step by step on how to build each one and then go through the tutorials that you need to build each one. So download that in the link in the description. All right, that's it for this week's video. I hope it really helped you out. And if it did help you out, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any other questions, feel free, as always, to let me know in the comments section, and I'll be sure to answer you there. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.